Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to see so many familiar and new faces to me here tonight, so welcome. My name is Greg Jacob. I am a board member at TRU, and my day job is the manager of community relations at Henry Ford Macomb Hospital out in Macomb County. At Henry Ford, our vision of the future includes a robust public transit system as a component of our healthy communities, a system that is accessible, reliable, and equitable. And that is part of our vision. That vision is also part, is shared by our panelists today, and I have the honor of introducing them. So they are right behind me, and their places right up here. So first we have, not first, but we have Senator Mallory McMorrow, who represents much of southeast Oakland County and northeast Detroit, and serves as the Senate Majority Whip. She is the chair of the Senate's Economic and Community Development Committee, and also serves on the Oversight, Elections, and Appropriations Committees. Regardless of having worked in auto design and marketing, she strongly values transit as vital to great communities, so please welcome Senator McMorrow. State Senator Jeff Irwin represents Ann Arbor and Southern Washtenaw County. He chairs the Housing and Human Services Committee and the Great Lakes and Environment and Budget Committee, while also serving on 7 other committees. You think your plate is full. For decades, he's been a fearless fighter for public education, environmental protection, and public transit. Thank you for joining us, Senator Irwin. We are also joined by Representative Jason Morgan, who represents Ann Arbor, Northeast Washtenaw County, and parts of Oakland and Wayne counties. Vice Chair of the Transportation Budget Committee, this UP native has become a tireless champion of public transportation, leading the charge to get record state funding for transit in last year's budget. And he's just getting rolling. And we also have Representative Donavan, McKinney. He is special thanks for being here tonight. He is about to become a new father, not yet, but he's on the clock right now.
My phone has its own seat.
He represents Northeast Detroit, my old neighborhood where I grew up, Van Dyke and Mallory, and parts of Warren. He's been long committed to mentoring youth, fighting for good jobs, and climate solutions that benefit everyone. So welcome. Power. We're also pleased to be joined by Kolodin, Director of the Michigan Infrastructure Office. Governor Whitmer appointed him with the enormous task of maximizing federal investment in Michigan's infrastructure and making sure it is wisely spent. So we're so pleased to have him tonight, too. With these experts and their wisdom, but we only have 25 minutes to hear from them. So we will be moderated by TRU's fearless leader, Megan Owens. So I will turn it over to Megan and our panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Well, I know each and every one of you is a transit champion in various ways. So y'all have been listening to me plenty. I know folks want to hear from you. Why don't you share with us for a moment, why is transit important to you personally? I was told make sure to keep the mic close, so our folks at home can hear.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So for me personally, I lived in New York City for 10 years, and I understand how incredible it is to be able to walk out of your house and affordably access your job or a doctor's appointment or whatever the case may be. And ultimately, I think every person in Michigan at least deserves that chance, right? Like, not everyone is going to decide, hey, I want to live in Ann Arbor, I want to live in the city of Detroit. But you ought to be able to afford a life like that if you want one. So that's why I think it's important.
Why is transit important to me? Like Zach, I have lived all over the country. I lived in 5 states, and It is really hard to explain to people who've never experienced personally how freeing it is to live in a place that has a robust public transit system where you can get around at all hours of the day. You don't have to own a car if you don't want to, and pay for insurance and take it to the shop when it gets dented. It is imperative that we provide that opportunity here in Michigan. When I ran for office for the first time back in 2018, you can imagine I look like this now. When it's the middle of the summer and I have a baseball cap on and a backpack, people think I'm 12. And I would knock on people's doors and they would say, you remind me a lot of my daughter who left. Why did you come back? And how can we keep my kids here? And a lot of it is making sure that we create a connected Metro Detroit region, from the city to the suburbs, so people can get around, enjoy the city, get to their jobs, and build careers here.
Senator McMorrow and I think both are often mistaken for high schoolers. Everyone says we'll enjoy that one day. I'm 34, we'll see. But for me, when I think about transit, I think most folks think of buses, trains, those types of things. But for me, when I think about transit, I think about people. I think about the people who need public transit to go about their daily lives and to get to the places they need to get. I think about folks taking a bus to their job so that they can earn a modest paycheck to take care of their kids. I think about the elderly folks who might take a bus to the doctor or to get health care that they need. I think of young people who might take the bus to school or to go out on a night for a night in Detroit or to see family or loved ones. I think about the people who are utilizing those buses and trains and any other form of transit. And I think about how important it is that we are connecting people to the outside world and to their communities. That is what transit is about. Transit is about the people of our state and connecting them to every other thing in the world that they want to access and that they need to access. And so that's what I think about when I think about transit. And so the idea that we still have to make the argument for why transit is important is still frustrating to me, because I tell people all the time, young people want transit. Young people want transit. And frankly, all people want transit. It seems like everyone tends to agree on this concept, but to actually prioritize it is a different question. So I'll stop there, but I am just so incredibly passionate about transit because it's about the people who we are working to get to where they need to go. Thanks.
The rep's point and the senator's point, when I think about transit, I think about freedom, but more importantly, reliability and predictability and making sure you're able to plan out your life. And so I'll share this story with you guys real quick. Well, one quick point. The fastest growing population in the state of Michigan right now is 85 or older. And so, we're losing population when it comes to pretty much 25 on down. And a lot of this stems from our transit issues and inefficiencies. And for me, growing up in the northeast side of Detroit, near 7 Mile and Van Dyke, going to high school was a challenge because I didn't go to my neighborhood high school because schools at the time, had this issue. They're developing new plans for it now, and hopefully schools are becoming better in the neighborhoods. But I attended Renaissance High School, which was on the opposite side of the city in northwest Detroit. And the buses never ran literally on 7 Mile, so we would have to walk. Me and my cousin, we would walk from 7 Mile and Van Dyke to the State Fair Transit Center on Woodward. Just think about this, on Woodward, right? Between 7 and 8 Mile, right off the State Fair. And I would take the 8 Mile bus to Northland Mall, which is, near 8 Mile and Greenfield, and walk down Greenfield to Renaissance, which is on Mountain Drive in Greenfield. And so it would take me 2.5 hours to get to school every single day. To about 2.5 hours to get home. And so I knew growing up, I always loved most of that time spent was just waiting. And so, you know, I'm all in support, and that's why I joined the Transit Caucus with, you know, the co-chairs, Rec Morgan and Rec Mike McFalls in the audience. Make some noise tonight. This district, by the way, so welcome to District 8. But like, we need to do better. And I haven't really heard, I've heard some things in terms of investments in buses. We're trying to do everything we can, but we have to do more. This is how we're going to keep our younger generation from moving out. So I'll pass it along to our famous senator.
Donavan. Thank you, Representative. I'm not going to be able to beat the that was dropped up McKinney and the story you just dropped on us. But I'll give my answer just very simply. Look, when I was a local official and now as a state official, my job is to try to make the community I represent and the state that I live in the best possible place for people now and people in the future. And that's literally what we should do. And so when I was first elected back in local government, one of the first things I did is to start to look around. I've traveled around the world like many of my colleagues and traveled around the country, and you look around and you say, the Detroit metro area has all these things going for it. You know, you can name them, it's a long list, excluding weather. And, but you know, one of the big gaping holes has been transit for my entire life. The most important thing we could do to bring this region together and to grow this region economically has been transit, and we have failed time and time again to get it done. And it's not because of a lack of good ideas, it's because of a lack of political will. So I decided I was going to apply my political will to trying to change that. And you know, I think it's as simple as this. When you connect people, good things happen. Good things happen socially. Good things happen socially, good things happen culturally, good things happen economically. And here we are in Southeast Michigan, which is still, unfortunately, one of the most segregated regions in the entire country. Transit could help with that. And our lack of transit is a big reason why people are stuck in cycles of poverty right now. So transit is important socially. It's also important culturally. You know, we talk a lot about economics, but sometimes we forget about the jobs and the joy that comes from cultural development, that comes from arts and science, nightclubs, you know, people going out and enjoying music or painting or ice skating and recreation, all these kinds of things that people enjoy to make their lives better. Transit connects them to that. And it's also incredibly important economically.
We've been talking about economic development in Lansing a lot over the course of the last year. It's been a huge focus of this administration. And my goal is that we continue the progress we've been making by taking transit and making that a key component of our economic development strategy in Michigan, because it is the key missing component right now.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And that was actually a great segue talking about political will. Well, transit's obviously a very local issue in many ways. The state plays a really vital role in both funding and guiding transportation throughout the state. I was hoping each of you could share one or maybe two things that you're working on that might help improve or expand transit throughout the state.
Yeah, I'll give two really quick ones. One, just in my local area, because I think a lot of this gets very, very tactical. I'm trying to work with the State Department of Transportation and the local officials to make sure that when we rebuild Washington Avenue, we do it in a way where we don't end up with a strode, with a road that doesn't contribute to our community, and that instead we end up with a throughway that grows the economics and allows more people to interact with it. At the state level, I'm working on some legislation to try to fix our regional transit authority legislation. Now, I would encourage anyone in the audience who has ideas about how we should do that to communicate with me. But right now, I'm really focused on fixing one of the problems with that legislation. So I was there in Lansing as a state representative when that bill was passed. I believe it was fall of 2012. And when it was passed, there was a provision put in there that basically makes it impossible for us to have rail here in Southeast Michigan. Now, I think that if we're going to have a transit system, it should be a balanced system, and we should invest in the types of modes that make sense, and that might make different modes might make sense in different areas. But because we have that prohibition, or a basic prohibition, a supermajority required for investing in anything rail, that just takes that off the table completely. It takes an option off the table for our region, and I just think that's a mistake.
My district covers the Van Dyke corridor, mainly going through Northeast Detroit, Warren, and Centerline. It touches Sterling Heights. And so I have this idea that I've been pitching to the county commissioners, county execs, the mayors of the cities, to connect that Van Dyke corridor, because it connects 3 of the top 4 most populous cities across Michigan. One of, Sterling Heights being the 4th largest, Warren being the 3rd largest, Detroit being the largest. And one of the things that we're working on too is this big Iron Belt Trail, right? This state trail that goes across all the way north side of Michigan, all the way to the west side into our area, and it's coming down Van Dyke. And so there's already going to be work on, making sure that we create those bike lanes and create those walkways and pathways. But why not make sure that people can easily walk down and path, and also maybe some bus rapid transit, maybe some rail, I'm not sure, but we're trying to figure out the cost of all of that. I know the biggest focus is, fixing the damn roads, but in reality, roads aren't just what we need to be fixing and prioritizing. We need to do a lot more than just fixing the roads. We need to make sure that people are connected and they are able to get down these corridors, especially cross county, because, I believe that 8 Mile is no longer a border. And I'm going to be honest, we in this redistricting process and all that, can't speak too much on that part, but one of the good things about redistricting that has happened, it created an environment where we're all in rooms together. That has probably never have happened in the history of these districts. They're crossing, commercial corridors and bringing people together and having these conversations, talking about, hey, you know what, you were in Macomb County, you know what, if you win, we all win. If Detroit wins, we all win. It's not Detroit versus everybody, suburbs versus Detroit. This is one region. We need to figure out ways to come together. And so, oh, thank you. But this is real serious. And so this is one of my passions, and I'm supporting Senator Irwin and a lot of initiatives, but that Van Dyke corridor, I think, hopefully comes to fruition and comes to light, because it's going to be a lot of good things that come from it. So I'll pass it along to Rep. Morgan.
I think Rep. McKinney makes a really excellent point about these new districts bringing folks together. The district that I won in Ann Arbor, downtown Ann Arbor, previously was only in the city of Ann Arbor. I now have downtown Ann Arbor and the University of Michigan and parts of Wayne and Oakland counties. So it's surprising in the process to see that district change so much. But it's been amazing because I get to be part of the Wayne County delegation, the Oakland County delegation, work with folks in this region and think about things in a much broader policy and budget-focused way that isn't just siloed into our own individual districts. This is about helping our entire region, helping our entire state. Frankly, that's how we should have all operated in the first place, where we're not just thinking about ourselves or our individual city that we live in, but all of our communities in the state. So there are 2 big things that I've been working on, and this has been the thing that I've been most passionate about as a legislator. Representative McFall and I are organizing a transit caucus. We're very excited about that. We have 36 members of the legislature, including all 3 folks up here, along with me, that have signed on to join us in that endeavor, including some bipartisan support. We have at least 1 Republican who's joined us, who's interested in transit. We'll take it. And my hope is that we could actually get some more too, because I think if we really look at transit in a much broader way, I think we really can appeal to a lot of folks who may not otherwise think of themselves as transit advocates. But our hope is to bring together everyone who cares about transit. Right now we're at 36, that's like a third of the legislature. I'm not that great at math, I guess, but it's somewhere around there. And so that's huge. I mean, we have a lot of folks who are passionate about this, who are interested in figuring out how they can work together to support. The second thing that I'm working on, again with Brett McFall and other colleagues here, is coming up with some strategies to invest long-term in public transit. One of the kind of bills that we've been looking a lot at right now is developing a bill to significantly boost local bus operating funds. We had quite the endeavor last year to try to make sure we had support for the local bus operating funds. But one of the things that we found in talking with transit agencies and talking with advocates like Megan and her team and others is that we have funds available in the state budget already that should be going to transit from the auto-related sales tax. We have funds that are in the budget intended for transit. We're using them for the general fund. We want to capture and reclaim those funds for transit. That's going to be $250 million a year that should be going to transit. Buses, rail, and everything else. We should be able to pull those funds and keep them protected for transit. Boost the state investment in local bus operating, match at least 50%, not up to 50% of local bus operating funds. Massively increase that funding by $150 million a year. And really invest in transit using the dollars that are already there and available for transit funded in the state budget. This isn't a tax increase. It's not taking money from some other specific program. It's pulling it from the general fund. These are dollars that are already there. This is just one of the ideas that we're looking at as we hear a lot of great ideas and input from folks. So that's what we're exploring, that I've been working hard to develop a bill for. But we have to invest majorly in this long term if we're going to make something big happen.
So you've heard a lot of great ideas up here, and I just want to share a little bit of what I learned last year. So last year, if you watched any of the news, Democrats took control of the legislature for the first time in 40 years, the Senate especially. And so this was my first time serving in a majority position in control of the budget, in control of a committee, chairing the Economic and Community Development Committee. And as we talked about transit, something that was a real eye-opening moment for me was all of the municipalities that I represent talked about transit as really important. But then when they submitted their budget request to me, not a single one of my municipalities asked for money to fund it. And I don't blame the municipal leadership because there's, parks and community centers and all kinds of these things that are, again, to Mallory's point, within your local community that you need funded. But it points to this challenge of we've been so decentralized and the RTA hasn't been given the funding and the authority and the support that it needs to serve in the role that it was intended to serve, which is to be that unifying body, that if you don't ask for it in the budget, it's like it doesn't exist. We can pass policy all day long, but unless you fund it, it's not a real thing. So we fought really hard. I asked for significantly more than $20 million in last year's budget, but we got $20 million, and that is significantly more than nothing. And it is a step in the right direction. And then as the chair of the Economic Development Committee, something that I have been really passionate about is trying to push us to understand that we cannot incentivize our way out of our shortcomings. We know that when companies are looking at places where they're going to expand or invest or move to, talent is far and away the number one thing they look for. And there is no dollar amount that we could throw at any company that's going to make up for that. When Amazon was looking at cities around the country for Amazon HQ2, the state of Michigan put up $4 billion in incentives to lure Amazon to locate their second headquarters here. And we lost. Not only did we lose, we weren't even in the top 20. And they said it's because you don't have talent and you don't have transit. The places that won were New York City, because it's New York City, and Northern Virginia. But what Virginia did that was so fascinating was they offered $500 million in incentives, which is still a lot of money. But they invested more than $1 billion directly in education from K-12 up through a new campus of Virginia Tech, and they expanded transit in Northern Virginia. And that was the selling point, that the incentive was kind of the last push, but it was the investment in the people and the talent and the place that was the selling point for this company. So we are getting lapped right now by states around the country who are adopting this new approach. So I, through my committee, am trying to show transit investment is economic development. And we have to get out of this mindset that it is just giving money to companies and hoping for the best.
Investment in transit, because I think it's going to be really transformative going forward. You know, as the Chief Infrastructure Officer for the Governor, I think it's not obvious why I care so deeply about transit. You know, you could kind of imagine a world where that's different. But fundamentally, our infrastructure is about creating space for people to live the way that they want to live. And I think what we've heard all over the state is that people want to feel safe, they want to feel connected, they want to be able to use the roads in a way that, that sort of facilitates a high quality of life. They don't necessarily have to dodge vehicles as they cross the street, right? And we're in Detroit, so we understand what that feels like. And fundamentally, transit is about using that infrastructure as shared space. There's nothing more shared than a bus, carrying a group of people down the street and all disembarking or getting on the bus in the same place. And to make that work, you have to build infrastructure that facilitates safe connections to those places. It's actually really, it's wonderful that you're here at McKinney, but it's a very sad story that you had to endure that just to get to Renaissance. So, that's what I'm really passionate about in this space. And I think that what we're doing to make that a reality most immediately is the work that we've done around advancing corridors for transit with the RTA, with the match money that Senator McMorrow made available. We are making our corridors ready for transit, right? We're building the infrastructure that is needed to make people feel safe and comfortable in those spaces, and also creating a plan for building out bus rapid transit on the most significant corridors, in the state of Michigan. So I think that that's what I'm most excited about, and it really is just a first step to what I hope is ultimately a corridor plan that can build full BRT or BRT light on all of our major corridors.
Excellent. I knew this was going to go by way too fast, and I had 3 more questions that we're not going to get to, but because I know several of our panelists have other events they need to jump to. But we know there's enormous support for transit, but a lot of transit projects improvements have gotten close, but haven't quite gotten over the finish line. I wanted to see if either share some closing remarks that you might have, or if you can, how can transit supporters here in the room and with us virtually and through the region, how can we best come together to really make that change? How do we make sure we're moving beyond the talk and into the action? So if you can share that or any other closing remarks, I'd love to hear from each of you one more time.
Well, I'll let the politicians speak to the politics.
It's a joke, but the politics is important. The fact that, and huge credit to the representatives for pulling a caucus together for the first time, because I feel like, this is my 5th year in Lansing. I feel like sometimes it's just like me and Jeff yelling at each other about transit quietly in caucus, and it's not organized in any way, but there is power in numbers. So we saw how close the RTA initiative came in 2018. It was so close. And I felt like it took the wind out of the sails, and people didn't believe that it was possible. Now, there's also the challenges of how the RTA legislation was set up, and the fact that you need, votes from the Tri-County area to get it done that we could work through. But the fact that you're all here, the fact that we are building this transit caucus, keep making calls, keep posting about it, because political will is what pushes things in the right direction. The fact that we are creating a caucus, you guys are creating a caucus that we have 36 members of, there's going to be one loud voice in Lansing, finally, hopefully saying mostly the same things to the rest of our colleagues. And that can't be understated, but we're going to need all of your support to stand behind us when we're going to bat for budget asks and policy moves. Because people in these jobs, we're accountable to you at the end of the day. And it needs to be very clear that this is an issue that voters care about, and if you do not take action on it, you'll be voted out of office.
I think that's spot on. We've got to make transit a priority. I'm accused of being an optimist all the time, but I am really more optimistic than ever about the potential for major investments in transit. And I believe it's because of the folks up here. I believe it's because of the folks who are leading the legislature and the governor's office today. I feel like everything is possible. And it all rests on whether we make it happen or not. And I think all of you, along with folks all over the state who are advocates for transit, from here to the UP, to Grand Rapids, Lansing, every part of the state, making your voices heard to your legislators, to all of our legislators, to all of us, to tell everyone that transit is a top priority, that we have to invest in transit, and asking them, our goal is to work together and put forward some things that you can get behind and support, and then to do that in partnership with all of you. All the ideas that we've come up with so far, at least that I've been a part of, have come from a lot of the advocates in this room, and Megan's been an incredible voice for that. So we're going to need to work together. We're going to need to advocate very strongly, make that case to all of our legislators to prioritize transit, and that's all we can do. I mean, we've got to just push as hard as we can collectively together, and we're going to work our hardest to get some really good things together for you to hone in on.
Some closing remarks. Think about this. Just about 50 years ago, so 5 decades ago, our region had the opportunity to build comprehensive mass transit across the Tri-County area. The federal government at the time gave our region millions, multi-million dollars to build transit. What happened, as you guys, maybe some know, maybe some don't, that our region couldn't come together. So Oakland counties and Macomb County, they sent their money back to the federal government. Detroit kept its share and built what is now known as the People Mover, because it was cheaper to build above ground at the time than underground. And so when the money got sent back to D.C., the federal government reappropriated those dollars to the city of Washington, D.C., and they built their metro system off of that, which they have now, the DMV area can now enjoy. And so that was supposed to be us 50 years ago. Like, I don't know if you guys knew that, the history behind that. But when I learned the history, when I figured out, like, wow, it's because of regional, we get in our own way a lot of times. And so this is an opportunity, a clear opportunity to make sure that this transit caucus, 36 members, will expand on it. But more importantly, we get our federal government in support, we get our counties aligned, we get the locals behind it, and we get you guys behind it. The more people that's talking about making sure that we can come together as one region, instead of the infighting that has happened in the past, the easier it will be and the easier we can overcome. Because I believe transit is literally the single most thing that is hurting Michigan. It's our biggest Achilles heel. And if we can overcome that, I think this region will start to grow, and you'll see a lot of our young people and our talent coming here and staying here. And I'll say this too, and I'll pass it off to the senator, is that the largest thing I heard on the Doors campaigning in the summer of 2022 was that I want my kids and grandkids to move back to Michigan. And literally, it was more, and you guys remember 2020, it was abortion, was talking about gun safe, all of this stuff, right? But the largest thing I heard on the Doors was that I want my family to move back. And sad to say, I had to tell folks they're not moving back until we give them something to move back to. And that's going to be transit. And so we have to do our due diligence around this. And you guys got my support wholeheartedly, but we need to come together and get this done.
I guess I'm going to close by thanking all of you for being here. I mean, really what I think a lot of us have been talking about in terms of what needs to happen is to generate the political will to make this a priority for decision makers across the board, local government, state government, beyond. And TRUE is going to be a big part of that. So I want to thank you for supporting TRUE, because what we need to do is we need to raise our voices all over the region. And one critical aspect of that is supporting organizations that can bring that together and can help bring the region together and bring people together. So don't just keep supporting TRUE, but think about whether there are friends or other people in your life who care about transit, who care about Metro Detroit, who care about the future of this region, and who might be willing to support TRUE as well, because supporting good organizations that are pushing this issue is important. And then I just want to call on you individually just to think about this issue in the context of other issues. There are a lot of things out there in the political environment where the public overwhelmingly believes in something, but it never happens. And the reason is because there's a mismatch of intensity. And one of the reasons why when Governor Whitmer was running for office for the first time, she adopted that slogan, "Fix the damn roads." Why did she adopt that slogan? Because she heard people with great intensity talking about this issue wherever she went. We need to make sure that our elected officials at the local and state level hear about this issue wherever they go. We need to make sure that when legislators have town halls, and I've got one in Tecumseh in a couple weeks, that someone shows up and asks the question, what are you doing to advance public transit in Southeast Michigan? Where does transit rate on your list of priorities? What kind of legislation are you working on to improve transit in Southeast Michigan? Not enough of us get those kinds of pointed questions from people. And it's not just in town halls and coffee hours. It's not just sending them an email asking them where they stand and encouraging them to stand in the right place. You also have to chase on social media too, right? Because I'll tell you, that's a really powerful place. It's like a virtual town hall where other people are going to see your question. And they're going to see the answer or the non-answer from these elected officials who work for all of us. And so I just want you to raise your voice. I want you to get more intense. I want you to keep asking about transit more. Because right now, we have not overcome the inertia that we have in this region. Our voices are not loud enough. We're not asking enough pesky questions. We're not, putting these public officials in a position where they have to take a position on this issue, where they're wondering, how am I going to deliver for my residents on this issue? That's how we have to make it.
So I would be remiss if I failed to mention that we do have an unprecedented opportunity to capture federal funding for any number of infrastructure priorities, including transit, including rail. I guess I would say a couple things about that. Number one, we have the opportunity at any point to apply for capital investment grant funding for transit. What we need is, as Ben at the RTA well knows, what we need is a plan, and we need a fiscally sustainable plan. So ultimately, funding unlocks capital, right? That's also true in the rail space. The federal government created the Restoration and Enhancements Grant Program for rail, which is the capital program that follows on the Corridor ID program, which Michigan won, I think, 3 designated corridors in the most recent cycle. What we need to actually build those corridors out is funding for rail, right? And I think what a lot of people don't understand about rail specifically in this region is that unlike in New York, Boston, Virginia, places on the Acela corridor, Amtrak doesn't pay for our rail, right? We pay for our rail. So we got to figure out sustainable funding models to build out service and improve frequency and make the connections that are missing. So I guess what I would say is I do hope, and I'm pushing every day for us to capture as much transit and rail capital as we can through the bipartisan infrastructure law and even the Inflation Reduction Act. But what we need to actually open new services is sustain revenue sources. And that is sort of the key political barrier to moving forward.
Give these folks a big hand. We have an amazing set of champions here we have an amazing set of champions here who we will be hearing a lot more from in the coming weeks and months and years. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here.